Hey BionicDance.
Hey Dev.
Let's do this. So Kate, this is for you. First off, in your video about I have pledged no allegiance, you say this at one point.
Like I said, atheists band together in self-defense against religious misbehavior, and for pretty much no other reason.
Now my problem with that is that's not why I talk to other atheists. I mean, that has nothing to do with my reason for communicating with other atheists online.
But see, I didn't say communicate. I said band together. I mean, one thing that people have really missed, even though I said it in this video, is what I'm talking about is forming alliances, forming affiliations, becoming part of groups, explicit parts of groups. That's more than just hanging out. That's more than just, gathering a little bit to chat or to debate. I'm talking about forming teams, forming, well, I don't want to say armies, but you get the idea. I'm talking about formal alliances and not just hanging out with each other.
It really never came into play. I don't feel as though I have to defend myself against any religious group or religious people, and I'm seeking out other atheists to band together with for strength and support.
Well, I kind of see it a different way. I mean, think about it. Well, you're going to bring this up later, so I might as well start now. Lesbian, homosexual, right? The church kind of has an objection to that, you may have noticed. They don't want me getting married. There's some out there, I could name names, I'd have to go look it up though, but there's this one pastor, I think he's got Ron Paul support or something, or he's supporting Ron Paul, who thinks that we should bring back execution for homosexuality. Yeah. If you don't see how I've got a problem with that, and I'm surprised you don't, well, I do. I got a problem with that. And I'm going to band together with the folks who are going to fight against it. We've also got things like abortion and stem cell research and all of that other shit that the church objects to that honestly doesn't cause anyone any harm. And yet they've got their panties in a wad about it and think we should all conform. I got a problem with that. A lot of people have a problem with that. And so we kind of band together for strength in numbers against it. But we don't really team up for too many other reasons. At least not that I've noticed. If there's another thing, someone tell me, but yeah.
Well, that brings me to my next issue, actually. Kate, I love you. We've been friends a long time now.
Yeah, and more I kind of miss hanging out on Blog TV like we used to. You've been doing the Blog TVs. It's been my fault. I haven't been showing up. I've had other things that I've been doing where Blog TV would just totally get in the way of my actually doing them, and so yeah, it's my fault. But yeah, I kind of miss hanging.
And I gotta tell you, your reliance on dictionary definitions I find a little troubling.
To be fair, I rely more on etymology than I do on dictionary definitions. I find some dictionary definitions are, well, off-kilter, but that's just me being pedantic. Go on.
The reason for this is language is rather fluid, and you can't just say that this is the dictionary definition, so therefore that's what it is, period, and just leave it at that. Which
honestly isn't exactly what I'm trying to do. Here's the problem. When we have a discussion about this sort of thing, and people use words that have different definitions, but it's the same word, well, that really gets in the way of communication. How are you supposed to have a discussion if when I say atheist, I mean one thing, but when you say atheist, you mean something else entirely? And if we can't find some commonality where, okay, this definition is represented by this word, while this definition is represented by that word, well, how are we supposed to be able to talk to each other? That's the problem. So I try to rely on, well, etymological definitions, not dictionary definitions, although sometimes those are the same. But the point is, I try to rely on etymology simply to be able to find some common ground, to be able to say, okay, when I say atheism, I mean this, and when you say atheism, you also mean this. That way, When we say atheism, we're on the same page with each other. And what you normally mean when you say atheism, let's use this word for that instead. That way, when we talk about these two concepts, we're not using the same word to express different ideas. That's the point. It's not a matter of use my word or else. It's more a matter of how the hell am I supposed to know what you're saying if we don't have some linguistic conformity?
Language evolves over time, and you, of all people, should know this is true. You are a lesbian, are you not? Or do you actually literally come from the island of Lesbos?
Well, believe it or not, it does bother me a little bit, actually, Dev. That word does, at times, cause me some cognitive dissonance. I mean, I'm sure there's people who are actually from the Isle of Lesbos who don't like that we use that word, who wish that they could express their, well, not nationality, but their origin or whatever, in a way that did not have itself tied up with this whole sexuality thing. Now, you know me, Dev. You know I'm all about the puns. I love wordplay when it comes to humor. But when I'm trying to get a message across, it does bother me when we have these words with multiple meanings that do genuinely get in the way of communication, where they mean different things to different people, and there aren't easily used words that mean the same thing and have fewer problems as far as different definitions are concerned. It does bother me. And, you know, I mean, I guess lesbian is kind of an extreme case, but even so, yeah, it causes me some cognitive dissonance. It really does.
See, that's the problem when you rely on the dictionary definition or the etymology of a word. Those things kind of change over time. They evolve. They flow with culture and with usage.
I gotta say yes and no. You see, while the dictionary definitions definitely do drift over time, the fact is that the etymology really kinda doesn't that much. Not really. I mean, the word particles that we use tend to stay more or less the same. I mean, you take the particle a at the beginning of atheist, right? And what you end up with is not a theist, an atheist. The problem is, of course, that the original definition of atheist, or the original etymology, was not atheist, but atheosist, which is very, very close to the same thing, except what they're saying with atheosist is a no-godist, a God denier, whereas an atheist is not a theist. And they shortened them down to the same word, which is where a lot of the confusion is coming from. If they'd gone atheosist is the God denier and atheist is the person who has no belief in God, well, then we'd probably have less of this confusion. But they didn't do that, and therein lies some of the problem. But the point is that the etymology doesn't change nearly as much as the dictionary definition tends to. And when we get that definitional drift, that's where we start getting into problems of communication, where people just simply aren't speaking the same language to each other, even when they're using the same words. And that perspective issue is a problem when you're trying to communicate an idea to somebody. I mean, you, in your video, posted some scenes from that Star Trek episode, the one where they meet that alien race that speaks only in metaphors.
Darmok and Jalad at Tanagra.
Yeah, that one. Now, I get the impression that we got different things out of that episode than the other did. Because what I got out of it was that if your language is personal, if your language relies solely on your own personal definitions, you're going to have a very difficult time communicating with others. I mean, just getting your ideas across is going to be difficult. Never mind whether or not the two of you agree or disagree conceptually. The number of discussions I've had with people where they used a different definition for a word that I was using, and I was using a different definition from them, and we actually agreed with each other conceptually. We just couldn't communicate that fact because we used the words differently. I mean, that's a real problem. It seems to me that if you're going to have a formal technical discussion about concepts and ideas, you need some commonality of language. Otherwise, you're going to spend the entire discussion arguing back and forth about what's meant. I mean, sometimes you'll even think that you both have the same definition in your head. It's just the other person is flat out wrong. And it turns out that you both agree, but you're using the words differently. I mean, I just described that earlier. It's happened many times. And so it seems to me that in a formal discussion, you need some commonality of definition. In a more casual discussion back and forth with friends, that's another matter. That's when you start using slang and alternate definitions, and it's no big deal. But when you're debating and discussing, I really do think that you need to find common ground linguistically, or you're not even having a debate yet. You're not having a discussion. You're just talking past each other. You're unintentionally strawmanning each other. And I'd like to prevent that.
There's a certain amount of cultural context involved.
And see, for an informal discussion with your friends or whatever, I totally agree. It's perfectly fine to have all the cultural context, cultural bias you like. No problem. Makes perfect sense. But when you're in a formal debate, or if you're in a technical discussion, whether it's about, I don't know, philosophy, science, or just how to put together your lawnmower, it seems to me that eliminating the cultural context as much as is practical, because obviously you can't get rid of it all, is a very good idea. I mean, otherwise, you know, you could lead someone into a horrible mistake, or it may be that, say, you're having a debate with someone and both of you agree, but you don't realize it because you're using different language to express the same concept. I mean, it seems to me that cultural bias, cultural context can be a real problem, at least in a formal kind of debate setting, which is a lot of what I do on YouTube.
You know, pull out a dictionary. We all don't walk around with dictionaries in our pockets. We all have a way of speaking. We all have a way of making our own language colorful. If this is troublesome to you, that's really your problem, and that's something that you need to work on.
And see, I disagree, because in these discussions, I've laid out exactly what I mean. I've shown the etymology, I've shown the dictionary definitions, and sometimes even where I disagree with the dictionary definitions and why. I lay it out in pretty much no uncertain terms what I mean when I say the word atheist, and why I mean that. And it seems to me that after I've done so, if people continue to misunderstand, well, that's kind of on them more than me.
Something to think about.
And believe me, I've given that so much thought. That's why I'm at the place I am now. Clearly we disagree on this matter and why we should go one way or the other, but it's not like I haven't thought about it. I mean, come on, what's my slogan, huh? Just saying. I'll catch you evil geniuses later. And, by the way, Dev, thanks for not being an asshole, 'cause not everyone was that nice. Science. If you're doing it right, sometimes you'll find out you're wrong.